Hi all, hope you're doing well. This is Maro, welcome to my channel. I have an Odin replay for you guys today. Got a ship through the, promotion event, the shipyard, I think 9.5, 9.6 update back in June. Played a few games and now played a little more and just trying to get a sense of the ship and I'd like to share some of my impressions and the gameplay as well with you all. So it's a good ship. It's in line with Scharnhorst in terms of more of a cruiser-like ship than a battleship, but with some battleship characteristics. One of the biggest drawbacks is the health pool. Health pool is just under 53k, which makes it the lowest tier 8 battleship health pool in the game right now. Bismarck and Tirpitz top at 69. I think the other lowest health pool battleship is Monarch at around 60k. Vlad tops the list at 74. So most of the battleship that Odin meets in the game will tend to have more health, will tend to have bigger guns as well. Odin's guns are 305 millimeter, 12 inches, 9 of them in 3 turrets. And penning battleship armor at range is not an easy task. Um, Penning cruiser armor, that's a lot better and easier task to do. The shells are relatively good. The accuracy is fine, for the most part anyway. But dealing damage to battleships that are angled is a challenge. It's a challenge because, AP shells obviously cannot really overmatch much, right? So you have to shoot for the superstructure. And HE is not really that good. Closing in to use your secondaries. Secondaries are pretty decent. 150 millimeters, I believe, at the one turret, three guns in the front and in the back, and then 100 and what is it? They're 128, 130 millimeter guns on the sides, which get the 32 millimeter pen value. So they're pretty decent. However, if you close in on the battleship, you risk some serious damage, especially early in the game. If you get focused, given given how low your health pool is, you're not going to be long for the world. As a result, it's better to stay at range initially, at least, and try to get the most out of the ship without committing too early, as that can backfire. And I've had quite a few games where I YOLO'd in and didn't last long, really. This health pool gets erased very fast. Now, the armor that the ship has is pretty good. So the health pool, the lowest at the tier. The armor, it's battleship-like armor, 32 millimeters back in the front, 50 millimeter central deck, um, good belt armor as well. So while the ship almost feels like a battle cruiser, right? In terms of health, I think Alaska and Kronstadt have more health than Odin has. Odin has the armor layout of a battleship, so if it snows in, it's able to bounce the 16-inch shells, which is a big advantage, especially if you're closing in on one-on-one. Because you can get closer, get to within the secondary firing range, which in this case is 11.6 kilometers. And B, you also have torps. You have two torp launchers, four torps each in the back, the standard German torps. So if the battleship is down to, I think they're 13 or so thousand maximum damage. So that's four, that's 50. You know, even if you have the the torp protection, that's even 50%, you're still doing 25 to 30,000 damage from the torps, if not more. So once you're able to close in, the other battleships are not in a good position to combination of armor. The guns are good enough, especially at the brawling range, to inflict some serious damage, and torps to finish off the battleships. However, the ship's already been around 3-4 months, so most of the players that you do meet are already very well aware that the ship carries torps and will try to keep you at a distance and will try not to get too close. So it does happen, and I think I looked at the number of ships that I played. I think I've only maybe destroyed, I don't know, out of maybe 30 ships or so, maybe 6 ships with torps. The rest, it's been a probably 2/3 mix, main battery, 1/3 maybe secondaries. Now, the build that I have here in this game is a secondary build. It may not be the optimal build, but it's a little more fun build, and that's why I uh, that's why I arrange and set up the ship like that. And the captain that I have on Odin now is my first captain. So secondaries, 11.6 kilometers, some fire prevention, superintendent. The concealment out of the box, it's actually pretty good for a tier 8 German battleship. I even don't use the concealment skill, and still my concealment is I think 13.4 kilometers. I do use the concealment module, so which is still pretty good and gives you an opportunity to be able to go in stealth when the situation calls for it. In terms of speed, you hit 30 knots. Not great, but it's fast enough for you to be able to you know, get where you need to on the battlefield. Typically, I would look with Odin to really grab the flanks and try to make my move on the flanks, like I just did here with the Massachusetts, and then the DD and Bismarck kind of just pushed and got themselves caught in the crossfire. Now the Charles Martel here is playing it smart. He's almost baiting me to follow him, but with my 305 mm guns, I cannot overpen him. And the occasional shot that I would land on him is not really going to make up for the fact that he's going to be able to keep me lit for a long time. And given all the engagements that I've already had, and given that the Lex carrier is nearby, and my AA is okayish, it's maybe Bismarck level AA, mostly focused on the 4 kilometer range, so uh, medium range. But obviously, it's not going to protect me from tier 8 planes making their way through and hitting me. So here, I look for an opportunity to turn away. The island is conveniently located. I just want to make sure that I don't suffer too much damage in the process of turning away. And here I keep AP for most of the time, and I shoot AP. And if you shoot AP battleships, you have to go superstructure. You have to go the upper casemate kind of belt, not really the main armor belt, because you're gonna struggle to pen it, especially below 10k if the battleship is somewhat angled at you. So the best thing to do is try to keep the aim a little higher at longer range. Now I tried switching to HE, but the ability to really start fires and the ability to do damage just really wasn't there. So I have simplified my life and just stayed with the AP in this case. So here I'm turning away. I'm not going to rush to try to get him in the secondary, especially with the cruiser there. I'm going to let somebody else kind of take the brunt of fighting the two ships. My health pool is already at half. I have some more heals coming, but I'll take the time to rebuild and go down the center. And that's something that you really have to do with this ship pretty often, because you know constant firefight is not something that the ship can really do. Prolonged firefights, it's not something that the ship can engage, because while the armor is there, the consistent damage will wear you down pretty fast. So ability to engage and disengage, I think it's something that needs to be practiced when playing this ship. To me, and I guess I already mentioned that, but the way I really play Odin is as a battle cruiser. It almost kind of reminds me of Alaska in that way, that you look for the opportunities to engage. Obviously, with Alaska, you would be using a lot more HE, especially at longer ranges, because the ship is a lot more effective at it. But in terms of preserving the health and making sure you don't engage or overextend, something very important to do. Otherwise, trip to port coming up right away. So now we are still, I think, behind here in this game, maybe 100 points. But we've gotten the two caps. I have rerouted back to the middle, safety, safety from the planes, because this is a 2 CV game, tier 8, tier 6. Our CVs, for whatever reason, died very early on. They were hiding in the top left corner of the map, and the enemy team just overrun them. So when that happened, obviously my expectation was, we're not going to necessarily be able to make it because the two CVs just constantly attacking us will wear us down eventually. However, I think staying close together or close enough has provided sufficient AA protection for most of us. And when you play against any CV, obviously, especially if it's the same tier, like in this case, you will look for at least a cruiser to stay close to, because, as I said, the AA, and you do have fighters included. You can select the fighter or a spotting plane. I keep the fighter, although I have to say that the returns on having a fighter when it comes to shooting down enemy aircraft have been, you know, not so good. Only a few planes, and obviously, the way the mechanic works, the enemy CV is always able to land an attack before you're really able to engage them with your own fighters. So hopefully that may get fixed eventually to actually make it more meaningful. But in any case, staying grouped, trying the best we can, moving towards the last remaining cap, and I think at this point we really have an edge now in terms of ships and where we are. So the team somehow was able to really make it work. Typically it doesn't necessarily happen, and I've had quite a few games where the team doesn't come together and work together as they have here, but they did do that here and made a big difference. So we're able to move now to B cap and make our way towards the A cap, engage the remaining ships. I think another point that I wanted to touch on are the consumables. Obviously, you have the standard heal here, the repair party, but you also get the Hydra as well. I think it's 3.5k torps, 5k ships, and obviously, given I think it's a 22% torp reduction, which is the same for Bismarck and Tirpitz. You know, Torp hits are something you feel on the ship, and while the ship is somewhat more maneuverable than Tirpitz and Bismarck, I think for by around 2 seconds in terms of rudder shift, and turning circle is somewhat less big, so you're able to be a little more nimble. Um, and that could be just me, have eaten quite a lot of torps, even with the hydro on. So caution um, is something that's strongly advised when it comes to playing the ship. And while hydro obviously helps, um, care and caution still strongly recommended, especially again given the low health. One hit and the inability to heal much of it is something that you will definitely feel. Now, what's enjoyable with this ship again is, obviously it's a sleek, it's a good looking ship. I like secondary build ships. It's just always fun to see those secondaries going off and touching the enemy at 11.6k. German secondaries with their quarter HE pen, obviously something that's a big plus because you can hurt the most of the battleships at 32 because you're able to pen that, and then with your larger guns, 38 millimeter as well. So unlike the US secondaries on Massachusetts, you're able to inflict some direct damage without really having to spend any captain skill points to get the ship in the best position to be able to do that. But unlike Mass, not as precise and also not as good of a fire starter as Mass. So I have done damage, and typically maybe it's around 20% of the overall damage would be secondary damage. But in terms of starting fires, not necessarily there. So this was a good game. It kind of displays, what the ship can do. It's a fun ship. If you have a chance to play it, play it. It's more like a battle cruiser. So obviously there is a challenge baked into that. It's maybe not an easy ship to play. But then again, I'm also not a great player, and I play it decent enough, and the winning rate there is maybe closer to 60%. Obviously, I think maybe it was 30 games or so, so got a little bit of luck there. But in any case, if you have a chance to get your hands on the ship, you should definitely do that. It's a fun ship. It's an enjoyable ship. So I wish you all the best. Good luck on the high seas. That's it for me. Maro out.